Grace Talks. Hello and hello. Good to have you joining us today. Another installment, season number 3 of Grace Talks, and you're seeing me on television here. Well, on live stream. Maybe you're not watching on television. Maybe you're watching on your mobile devices. It is so good to be alive today. I'm glad. Not only am I glad to be alive, I'm glad to have a really, really special guest today. Really good friend. I just love him dearly. And it's my buddy, brother David LeMarr. He is here with us. Hello, David.
Yes, hello. Man, thank you, Pastor Derek, for having me on. Excited to be here.
Hey, it's my pleasure to have you, David. David is a associate pastor in Abilene, Texas. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, David?
Yeah, so first ran into Pastor Derek Marshall because I slept on his floor in a hotel room in Romania, and he had to pay a little extra because they found out.
Man, how long ago was that? How long ago was that now? 2008? No, 2009, right? 11 years or so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 12 years. Yeah.
So we met for the first time in Romania. And he's right. He did sleep on the floor. and how they do it in Romania is, or at least in some of the hotels that we stayed in, is you paid per person. And so we didn't know that because usually you pay per room, and then he wanted to stay. We were in a camp. Let's talk about that. We were in a camp in the mountains, and we were doing a camp, 1,000 Romanian kids. And David was there as a mission trip, and I was there as a mission trip also. And we had just met. And we were getting along pretty well and enjoying each other's company. And I had a room. Josh Foz was in that room too. Yeah. And he said, "Hey, how can I stay with you?" Because I think, were you staying in a tent or were you staying? You were staying in a tent.
I was staying in. Yeah, it was like a little caravan next to the tents.
So so you were actually staying there because what happens is we get a big old tent, or we were building or getting a big old tent, and for at least 1,000 kids, and all of these kids, they stayed or they slept by the tent in their own tents. And so David was staying in a kind of a caravan in the tents, and they were brushing your teeth in the river, washing in the river,
all of it.
And so we just said, "Hey, man, come over here, and you can take a break from all of that and hang out with us." And yes, they did charge us extra for him staying with us.
But it was an amazing trip. But kind of from there, I then graduated high school, went to Christ for the Nations, and actually kind of got connected to a friend of yours, Pastor Nick DeBase, at Christ for the Nations.
Right.
And even then before there, my dad's a pastor. He's a pastor of a church in Oklahoma, a little town called Crescent. And you were pastoring at a church in Tonkawa. Those churches were already really connected. And so you've really kind of been just a mentor in my corner since I met you on that hotel floor room in Romania forever ago. And then from there, I was the youth pastor under my father after I graduated Christ for the Nations in 2014. Was there about 18 months. And then I took a youth pastor position where I am now here in Abilene, Texas at Fountain Gate Fellowship. And I've been here. Matter of fact, yesterday was 6 years here in Abilene.
Wow, 6 years.
Yesterday was my 6-year anniversary. And so last July, I transitioned from the youth pastor position to one of the executive pastor positions here. And so what I essentially do is oversee all of the ministries at our Abilene campus. And so I help the kids, nursery, youth, our junior high, worship, kind of everything that involves our Abilene campus kind of runs through me, and I get to help oversee some of that. And so, it's been a fun 6 years, and I'm excited for kind of this even new place that I'm at and moving forward in that.
Well, you wrote a book, and surely we're going to get to that and talk about that, but you're also a worship leader. And just let's talk about some of the. You are a PK, a pastor's kid, and that has its difficulties. And I remember talking to you when you were about 16, 17 years old, and you were not thinking ministry was going to be the avenue that God had called you for, or to do at least full time at least. So how did we get from there to associate pastoring and now writing a book about anxiety?
So I think I've always and we can start talking about this if we want, I guess, but I've kind of always struggled with feeling a need to be different. And I think that is something that a lot of my generation feels, this sense of that there's a TM at the end of my name, that my name is trademarked, that I am my own special identity, which has its pros to it. But I think there can also kind of come to this sense of being unsubmissive, I think. And so I kind of just felt like as a 16, 17, even 18-year-old at CFNI, even at Bible school, thinking, well, I can't do ministry because that would be too like predictable.
Yeah.
Like my dad was a pastor, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to, I want to stand out and do something different. But it really was, I was at Christ for the Nations. It was my third year. So this would have been into 2012, beginning of 2013. And I was walking through my dorm room, and I just felt like the Lord spoke to me really clearly. And he said, David, if you look at serving your dad as a tithe of your life, I'll bless you.
Wow.
And what I really felt like he was saying is, give me this portion of just go to the small town in Crescent, Oklahoma, serve your dad. It'll be like a tithe of your life. And I felt like the Lord was saying he was going to bless me for it. And so I didn't feel like I can't say no to that. I mean, I had to follow what the Lord was saying. And so went and was still doing full-time school. I actually wanted to pursue architecture.
Yeah.
And so I was a full-time student and then also a full-time youth pastor under my dad. And then when I got the call to move to Abilene, I kind of just felt like, I don't know, just kind of just released more or less of just like, maybe more of me giving in, maybe a little bit of just like, I know ministry is what I'm supposed to do. Like I kind of stopped fighting it a little bit and just realized this is what the Lord's called me to.
So it was when you accepted the position in Abilene that you said, this is the goal of my life, or this is what I'm going to give my life to full-time ministry. Is that it?
Yeah. Turn this phone off. Sorry, it's phone.
No, it's
yeah,
fine.
there really was. I don't really know exactly why I kind of like fought it like I did, because when I started youth pastoring in Crescent under my dad, I just fell in love with it. I love the local church. I think the local church is the hope of the world. Yeah. I think that if every local church could come together in a sense of understanding the circle of people that they are influencing and really have a kingdom mindset to take that on, I think the world would change. I think our nation would change.
That's no doubt about that.
It has to be localized. And I think this can tie into what I was saying earlier, because I think our generation struggles with seeing the significance in small and seeing the significance in small steps. My name is big. I have to do something big. I have to do something grandiose, which, like, of course, dream big. I love dreams. I love vision. I love going for that stuff. That's great. But don't despise small beginnings. And maybe the importance of your life isn't something that's so much wide. Maybe it's something that's so much more deep. And I think if we can learn to go deep, God will teach us how to go wide.
I mean, that's kind of the whole essence of the scriptures. This whole not to neglect small things. If you're faithful with a little, then God can reward you with much. Is that something that you learn being from a small town and a small community and having impact in that community and seeing growth? Change? Is it something that you learn as a young boy growing up in Crescent to not to look for the big grandiose, or how do you develop that?
100%. I think it was a big factor in that, because a lot of my friends in high school, they were, I don't know. There was this thought of Crescent's a black hole. You'll never leave it. You're stuck here forever. And I just kind of came to this conclusion as probably a 15-year-old that if you're bored, it's because you're boring. And if you're bored in a small town, we live in a world right now where opportunities are not limited to my town.
That is so true. I mean, that's so true.
With the internet, with YouTube.
Yeah.
And so, you know me, I started learning guitar. I started playing music. I started going for stuff, leading worship.
This is a guy who knows how to play everything.
Well,
most everything. At least in worship, you can fill in.
And it's just like there's this thing of just in me of just like I don't have to be limited to geography. Has no control over me. Yeah, my geographical location does not affect the call of God, the desires that are in me, and the things that I can do. And so I think learning how to steward what's small. I think that lesson really did help get developed in me, because more or less was forced to do it by being in town. Just so you know, for context, Crescent, Oklahoma is 1,300 people. There was 30 people in my class. You know who's in the grocery store? By the cars in the parking lot. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a small town.
His school's so small that everybody is voted to be most likely to succeed. Everybody. Because it's just everybody's.
And everyone voted least likely to succeed.
Exactly.
Well.
It's kind of the hard part about that. Let's talk about anxiety for a little bit, because he wrote this beautiful book. This beautiful book. I don't know if you can see it, but How to Cripple Anxiety. And it's a 21-day study, and we're going to talk about that. But how did you get? I wrote a little book several years ago about the father, and one of the reasons that I came to this conclusion, or one of the things that really sparked the message of the father in my heart, is because there was a fatherless void in my life that God really began to teach me the love of the father, and that he was not only a father, but a good father. So how do you come to this special encounter or revelation about the father? Is it because you were from a small town and you went to a big city to go to school, or being a pastor's son and the pressure of being a pastor's son, or what are some of the things that the Lord brought you from and gave you this special revelation about anxiety?
To really be transparent, it came from a place of necessity, but not out of necessity for me. Now, honestly, being out of a place of necessity to help understand how people are going through. Studies show 1 out of 5 adults severely struggle with anxiety. 1 out of 4 teenagers severely struggle with anxiety. And I think coming out of 2020, oh my gosh, more than ever.
You bet.
I mean, the level of uncertainty that we are walking in on a daily basis is just, especially for my life, completely unparalleled. And so growing up in a small town, having the amazing father, the godly father, you know my dad well, that I had such a
Your dad married me.
Household.
Married me and my wife,
I never really struggled with understanding who I was and what I was called to. At 13 years old, I knew I was going to go play guitar at Christ for the Nations. Like, I just knew it. And so I never really struggled with some things of uncertainty that a lot of people do struggle with. And so then becoming a youth pastor, I had so many students that just constantly struggled with anxiety and constantly just struggling with fear and stress and feeling overwhelmed. And not only that, but the pressures of even the difference between my high school experience and Zoomers now, their high school experience. Oh my gosh, even just the difference there of the stress, the level, the pressure, the peer pressure, the things even from social media that come in that just add such weight on people's shoulders of, I have to be at this level, I have to perform at this level. And so while I personally struggle with anxiety a lot in some relationships and feeling lonely and feeling left out and feeling like I wasn't good enough, I never really wrestled with things of, I always knew where I was going. In the midst of all of that, I never felt like I had anyone to come along with me, but I always knew where I was going. And so to really understand a lot of this, I felt like this devotional, How to Cripple Anxiety, came out of a place of necessity because there was just so many students around me that were struggling with this. And then I thought, coming out of 2020, what's the message that we need to hear? We need to hear how to cripple our anxiety, that anxiety does not have to be the thing that paralyzes us, but that we can actually turn out and figure out how to cripple our anxiety.
In your book, in the introduction, you say this: anxiety is not our king, Jesus is our king. Just elaborate on that, because that seems like a big message of hope as well.
I think what anxiety does to us is anxiety ultimately lies to us. Anxiety is trying to get me to put my emotional weight and focus on a hypothetical, on something that has not happened yet, on a maybe. It could be a likely scenario, but it's an scenario that has not occurred yet. It has not happened yet. And so what is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not yet seen. The same muscles that you have to use to be anxious are the same emotional, mental muscles you use to have faith. It's, I got to put my trust and be anchored in something that is not seen yet. Faith now gives me what the